right into, there we go. Okay, so welcome again, and I'm going to now introduce Dr. Theyel, who is the director of the Biomedical Manufacturing Network, which helps companies with engineering and business planning and maintains databases and maps of biomedical companies. Gregory is a manufacturing engineer with over 20 years of experience helping companies with strategy, product and process design, production planning, and supply chain management. He has assisted over 500 companies, as well as started and run his own companies. So we're very excited to have him here today to present. Take it away, Gregory.
Thank you, Samantha. I just can't say enough how much it's a pleasure to present this research to all of you. And I looked through the registrations and I saw lots of friends in the industry, and the wonderful thing about my job is that I've been able to spend the past 8 years just traveling around the Bay Area, especially Alameda County, helping companies. And so many of you are here today, and I really am happy about that. I also want to thank Samantha for the opportunity to do this research and present this study, and I also want to thank Michelle Nemitz. Biocom is a wonderful partner. And we do great work together, and I look forward to work with both Samantha and Michelle and in the future. So let me spend a little time on the study, but first let me tell you how this happened. So back in 2018, I made a presentation at the city of Hayward, and Samantha attended and came up to me afterwards and said, you know, I hear about this biomedical industry all the time, and we are training people and we're placing people, and we don't do enough with biomedical companies. What can we do to make a change? How can we come together and work together? And that's really brilliant. In fact, I mean, everyone on the Zoom today is from the industry somehow. It's connected to the industry, and so this is a really important coming together, because Samantha and her colleagues, Carmelo and Latoya in particular, that's what they do. They find people, they train them up, they develop curriculum, and now they're tuned into our industry. So that's actually really fundamental. So I really want to make that point, because we now have another friend to help us find talent, and this comes out of a lot of conversations with a lot of you, but I know that's something we all need. We need to develop more people, especially locally grown people, because then we don't have to bring them in, we don't have to pay for moving expenses, and they stay here and they're more committed to the company. So this is a big deal, in other words. So we did this study. So back in 2014, when I started the Biomedical Manufacturing Network, I got very good advice from Karen Engel, who was at the time the executive director for East Bay EDA, and she said, "Hey, you know, before you do anything, you got to know who you're trying to help. So why don't you develop an inventory of all the biomedical companies in Alameda County, and then just go and visit all of them." And so, I mean, that's a pretty audacious thing to suggest. I didn't know that it was so audacious at the time, but so that's where this study really began, because it allowed me to collect a data set from 2014. And then in 2020, we updated that data set. And so then we had these two data sets, one for 2014, one for 2020, and away we're going. We know where all the companies are. And not only do we know where they are, we know what they're doing. We have a pretty good sense of headcount. We have a pretty good sense of money raised. It really gave us a sense of knowing who the community is. And I think people talk a lot about building communities, building networks, and they don't always know who's available. And so we've been able to be very fortunate to know who's out there and to reach out to them and communicate with them on a regular basis. So that's the starting point of this. Then the second thing that happened is Dan Fletcher, he's a professor at UC Berkeley, who I'm friends with and work with, and he said to me, he said, you know what, if you could go around and just, when you talk to companies, just add in a question that says, what kind of skills, you know, are you guys looking for? You know, what's an ideal hire for you guys? And so for over about three year period, I just added this question in, when I met with companies. And before the pandemic, I probably met with 3 or 4 companies a week. And I'm funded, by the way, the Biomedical Manufacturing Network is funded by federal US money. And so the Small Business Administration and NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, those are the 2 entities that continue to fund the Biomedical Manufacturing Network. And so I give away free services. And so people are willing to talk to me. And so I ask them an extra question. So over this 3-year period, I gathered all this information about what they're looking for in the ideal employee. And so it really helped me build a database there. And so when Samantha approached me and said, hey, how can we work together? I said, well, why don't we make this information that I've been gathering, why don't we try to make it public? Let's put it into a report. Let's offer a summit. So that's really what's behind all of this. And I'll go into more detail as we go along on some of the methods, but let me just start from there on methods. But first of all, the slide you see, and hopefully everyone can see this slide very well. This is over 500, close to 550 biomedical companies sprinkled all over Alameda County. And there's some clear clusters, and we'll talk about those in a second. And I must give credit to my son Marshall. Marshall is my data genius and my mapper, and so he any of the maps I show and any of the databases I put together, he gets the credit for all of that. Yeah, I guess I should point out too, my slides. If you like my slides, my wife did them. So what do? I guess I just present, and I have good people behind me. So anyway, there's over 550 companies in Alameda County, and what are these companies? In other words, what constitutes the biomedical industry? Well, it's biotech companies, companies that use living organisms to develop products. It's pharmaceutical companies that are making drugs. It's medical device companies, so a device that's either in the body or something that's used with the body to improve health. It's medical equipment companies. That's companies that develop lab equipment, surgical equipment, healthcare equipment. It's digital healthcare companies. Oftentimes a piece of hardware, but also a digital aspect of it that helps improve health. And then the 6th segment of the industry or sector of the industry is the genomics sector. And that is taking people's genetic information and using it to help improve health. So those are the 6 segments that we focus on. And so that constitutes the biomedical industry. So if you're wondering what's the umbrella that's biomedical, it's all 6 of these sectors. So biotech, pharma, medical devices, medical equipment, digital healthcare, and genomics. Okay. And so just to give you a little background, Alameda County has one of the highest number of companies, concentration of companies of any county in the country. They're in the top 10. Now, there's a few, San Diego County is a big county. Massachusetts has a couple of counties. Austin, Texas is up and coming, that county. But seriously, we are one of the top counties in the country. And because biotech is such the biomedical industry is such an American industry, it's actually one of the biggest clusters in the world. So Alameda County, which, always has this inferiority complex, we're one of the places in the world where biomedical companies are concentrated. And so you may wonder why. Why is it that, especially such an important special industry? Well, first of all, we have an amazing talent pool here. And so when Samantha reached out to me and said, hey, I want to understand this industry better so my organization can work more closely with it, it couldn't be a better match. It really couldn't be, because we have an outstanding talent pool that tech certainly competes for, and other parts of the world compete for. We want to keep this talent pool. We want to train them up based on the needs of you company people here in the meeting today, so we can keep this talent in the biomedical industry and in Alameda County if possible. So that's number one. Number two, we have three government labs here with Lawrence Berkeley, Lawrence Livermore, and Sandia. We have the University of California, and we also have Cal State East Bay, and a very strong community college network with Laney and Ohlone and Chabot and others. So we have really strong kind of talent development partners. We also have some momentum. I mean, Berkeley was one of the founding locations, along with South San Francisco, for the biotech industry. And a lot of the other kind of parts of the industry really sprang up very close by, either in Alameda County or in the Bay Area. We also have an amazing support network as far as lab supplies and consulting services, attorneys and accountants, and all across the kind of supply network. We also have the good fortune of some realtors. I know some of you are on the call today. My favorite is Wareham Development because of what they've just done for Alameda County in particular, but there's some other fantastic realtors as well. I know CBRE is on the call today. They've done amazing things throughout Alameda County. So we have great realtors who are willing to kind of be visionaries to see what was needed to help grow the industry. And then we also had some companies. I know we have people from Bayer and Boehringer Ingelheim and Roche, and we have some, and Abbott. We have some people on the call today who really were the trailblazers, who came and set up their companies in Alameda County. And it really led to this kind of gravitational force of more and more companies coming to Alameda County. So that's why the industry is so clustered here. And if you want to know, if you're a number of you are planners, so you know what a location quotient is, the location quotient for Alameda County is a 2.7. So in other words, if you're at parity, if you have the average number of companies in a particular industry in a particular location, you'd be at a 1. A 2.7 is really, really phenomenal. And that's what it says, is that a lot of people in Alameda County are in the biomedical industry. And I know we don't get the press of some of the other industries, namely information and computer technology, but biotech is strong, and the biomedical industry is strong and very pervasive across the county. So let me spend a little more time telling you where the industry is located and just how it's grown as well. Okay. So next, this industry, like I said, it went from grew over 150 companies between 2014 and 2020. So in a 6-year period, we added a net total of 150 new companies. All right. Now, some segments of the biomedical industry, there's a fair amount of turnover. So this isn't 150 new companies. This is probably 300 new companies with a net gain of about 150 companies. And so the biggest gainer has been biotech. And there's some reasons that the study showed why that's the case. Biotech companies need space. They need wet labs. They need specialized equipment. They need special permits from the cities where they're located. They need far-thinking, visionary economic development people like we have in places like Emeryville and Fremont and Berkeley and other cities, and Pleasanton. And so that's why we've seen a real growth in this time period. And biotech is now the most common biomedical sector in the county. Okay, we have over 200 biotech companies. As far as medical equipment, it's been a solid industry, and at about 150 back in 2014, and now still a bit over that now in 2020. Pharmaceuticals, a little decline in the number of companies as these companies have grown and moved to places with bigger footprints. Medical devices have been pretty steady as well, but the two new growth areas have been genomics and digital healthcare. So remember I said genomics was about using genetic information either to predict people's health or to identify new opportunities for cures, and digital healthcare has been also a big grower as well. So biotech, then digital health, and then genomics have been the big growers, and medical equipment has been really solidly strong, along with pharma and then medical devices. Now, as far as employment, medical equipment has just continued to expand. And so that's another characteristic of the industry. Even though the number of companies hasn't grown significantly over that 6-year period, the number of employees in the county have really grown, and clearly it's almost twice as many employees as the other sectors. Biotech's grown in the number of employees with the number of companies, even though the companies are quite small. 200 companies, 6,000 employees. So you can see that the average isn't per company is quite small, especially compared to medical equipment. A decline in the number of pharmaceutical employees, but an increase in medical device employees in the county, and significant increases, very significant increases, tripling in digital health in the county in those 6 years. So some really, really solid growth over that 6-year period from 2014 to 2020, especially, like I said, in biotech, genomics, and digital health. So that gives us a kind of overall county growth picture. But this is for the cities. And I know there's a lot of cities on the call, and every company is, in a sense, from somewhere, and they're from here in different cities. There are 12 cities with biomedical companies in the county, all the way from Alameda to Union City. And so Fremont, and I know there's some folks in the session from Fremont. Fremont has been the leader and remains the leader in number of companies, and is way ahead of everyone in number of employees. And I'll tell you a little bit in a second about why that's the case. They're suited very well for the growth of this industry as a city. Berkeley and Emeryville play really important roles as well. In many ways, they are the incubators of commercialized research. And so there are a lot of companies coming that are growing and seeding and then expanding in both Berkeley and Emeryville. And I mentioned Wareham before, and Wareham's been a big part of that, Wareham development. And so they've provided a lot of space for these smaller companies that have grown. And so Berkeley and Emeryville both have exploded over this time period from 2014 to 2020. Pleasanton is another very, very solid story, just as Hayward is. Both of them have continued to grow. Both of them have continued to add employees. So they're important clusters as well. And I'll mention a few other cities as we go along, but that's the picture too. So number of employees, number of companies, we Fremont, then Emeryville, Berkeley, then Pleasanton, and then Hayward's for some real kind of clustered areas where there's opportunities. And there's more opportunities across the county as well. But those are the real leaders, okay? So let me talk a little bit about individual cities now, and tell a little story about each one of these. This is where Michelle has helped me on some of this analysis of the data to kind of, in a sense, develop the personality of these different cities. I call Berkeley the research commercialization hub, and right now there are 113 companies, biomedical companies in Berkeley. And Berkeley is where companies really get their start. It really is about research commercialization. Over half of these companies, part of our research was to talk to the companies and figure out how they started and what their roots are. Over half of these companies have some type of connection to UC Berkeley or Lawrence Berkeley Lab. So they're heavily connected to a research base that's in Berkeley. And you can see them clustered along West Berkeley, but also in proximity to the university as well. So this is a real, like I said, research commercialization is the personality profile. These companies are about a third of the size of the average, though, for the county. So these are much smaller companies. And another stat that I got from the research is that over half the companies have some type of federal funding as their initial financing. So either a small business innovation research grant or some type of government grant through the university or the lab to help them get started. So a certain personality of these companies and this city. Okay. Emeryville, hey, I call him the pound for pound champion. I hope Chad's on the call. I think he'll like that. Back to those location quotients that we talked about. Emeryville is a very small city, and they have about just around 60 biomedical companies. That gives them a location quotient of an 11. Okay, remember I said 2.7 was off the charts for Alameda County? Well, Emeryville has a location quotient of 11, so meaning they have 11 times more than what the average would be for just a typical city. So this is really pound for pound. They really punch above their weight as far as bringing companies in, and they have a bright future too. There are 3 really significant projects that are moving through the planning stages, and so look for Emeryville to continue to be a really important city in the county. Fremont, like I said, Fremont's a champion in many ways and has been a champion a long time, leader in the number of companies, substantial leader in the number of employees. And many of the companies, and one of the things that Marshall did when he made these maps for me is he's got these color coded. So medical devices and medical equipment, that's the purple and the yellow. So you'll notice that Fremont is just polka dotted with purple and yellow, which means that these are medical device and equipment companies. Out of the 130 odd companies they have, about 100 of them are medical device and medical equipment companies. And one of the reasons that the employment has been off the charts for Fremont is that because they have companies that move there to scale up. I call them the scale up leader because, you know, companies, they grow in other parts of the Bay Area, they grow in other parts of the world, but they come to a place like Fremont and surrounding cities too. I'll get to Newark and Hayward in a second. But they come from other parts because of the network of contract manufacturers, of component manufacturers, of expertise in other industries like sensors and software. There's just a tremendous amount of we'll call it support networks and related and supporting industries in Fremont. So Fremont's been a real leader and will continue to be because of the way they have this network of resources for their companies. Hayward, I call Hayward a rising sun. Hayward has surprised a lot of people, and while they're close by to Fremont, they also not only do they have medical device and equipment companies, they also have biotech companies and digital healthcare companies and genomics companies. If there's a surprise in all of my data, it was how robust Hayward is. And I know some of the economic development people, and they do, Paul and the folks he works with are outstanding. And they just do really outstanding work to let people know how important this industry is. And they bring people in to their city and get them placed here. So Hayward has done an amazing job to, especially, in the last, during this time period of the study. They've grown and they've diversified their portfolio of biomedical companies. Next is Newark. Newark's a really interesting story. I think Ann's probably on the call. She's a good friend, and Newark is the big surprise. And I know a couple folks are on this call too. I think probably Claude and Ben are on this call, and some of the other Allogene people. And Newark taps into the benefits that Fremont has. There's network nearby and components and all that. They've got a very, very progressive economic development staff helping them. They've got space. The Pacific Research Labs are really a strong asset in the city. And so Newark's another place that really has a bright future with, as we say in athletics, they have a lot of upside. So look for a lot of continued growth in Newark. And then finally, Pleasanton. I hope somebody's here from Pleasanton, because we often forget Pleasanton, but Pleasanton has really, really deep roots in the biomedical industry. I mean, Roche and Thermo Fisher and now 10X Genomics is there, and there's just a fantastic base there with a lot of employees. And they tap into a great talent pool over in the valley, and they tap into Lawrence Livermore, and there's just a fantastic cluster of companies in Pleasanton. So they're an important anchor in Alameda County. So those are the 6 kind of, we'll call star cities. But if I left out your city, I'll certainly answer any questions that you might have. But Union City and Livermore and Dublin, all great cities too. San Leandro, Oakland, all excellent cities as well, with representation in the industry as well. Next, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because our next module of today will be to talk through these sheets, but the report goes into detail on key titles for jobs in each of these sectors, so each of the 6 sectors. And so, for example, biotech with technicians and scientists, and the education level and the minimum skills required, and then the workforce skill set. And these are things we're going to talk through in the next module, but I did these for each of the 6 6 modules based on those 3 years of interviews. I talked to over 100 companies, just asking hiring managers, and many of you on the in the session are people I talked with, and these are the different things you told me, and hopefully this will be valuable to our education partners, to Samantha and her colleagues as they try to build this talent pool that we have here. So we'll get to this more in a bit. And then finally, I want to talk about a few recommendations here. And these are high level, so I'll just kind of just touch on these a tiny bit so we can get moving on to other things today. But you know, the colleges, the universities, the high schools all have a role to play. And one of the things we learned from this study is that, you know, there are certain skill sets that can be taught in these different institutions, and they're essential skill sets. And what we learned is that there's a gap. There is a recognized gap between what the company's people told me and what they feel that they're getting from the pipeline of talent. And I mean that is no disrespect to anyone for their programs. That's why we've come together as a network, is for us to kind of share this insight. And but there are true opportunities for collaboration between Samantha's organization, the universities, colleges, and high schools, and the companies. Okay, so that's one recommendation. Another is that there's a lot of training money available. And one of our calls to action today will be to just do that, just to tell you about some of the sources of money so we can train some people up for you. Either people you currently have hired, we call them incumbent workers, we can train them up so they can, you know, hey, you have a person with 9 years of experience and you need to train them up so they can move on to do a new job. We can do that with some of the resources we have in the county. If you need a new pipeline from your high schools, community colleges, or universities, there's money and resources available to do that as well. So that's the second recommendation. The third recommendation is that companies have an opportunity to engage as well. Like I said, I talked to over 100 companies, and they were so forthcoming with what they need. And so I think continuing that dialogue with some of the people I'm introducing you to today is really what we need to do to continue to build this industry here in Alameda County. One of the we'll call bottlenecks on continued growth would be a lack of talent. And so clearly that's one of the things we're trying to accomplish with this report as well as today's session. And then my last recommendation is that cities, hey, listen cities, in this report I tell you what different companies need. So I called out Emeryville because Emeryville is building wet lab space, and they're permitting biotech facilities, and they've got a high-speed internet for digital healthcare companies and genomics companies. So they're well positioned. Other cities are well positioned for the different needs of different types of companies. So that's my last recommendation. So recommendation for everyone, some for the high schools and colleges and universities, some for the companies, some for the cities as well. So I'm going to stop here and just start answering some questions now. And then we can come back to more of this, any of these details as we go forward. Okay, so if Samantha, if you could go through some of the questions for us. I'll start answering some of the questions from chat, and then I'll answer any other questions that anyone might have as well. So.
Great, let's start with Chad then. Did Chad have a question? Oh, sorry, you said the chat.
Either one's good.
Sorry. So Leslie Blackie has a question. Go ahead, Leslie. You
Hi, Leslie.
Off mute.
Hello. So when you mentioned in the report that there is a gap between what the industry wants to hire and what they're looking at, in my experience, usually the biggest problem with getting my community college, Leslie Blakey from Laney College. The biggest problem with getting my graduates hired is that they have certificates and they have AS degrees, and that the industry continues to write job descriptions requiring bachelor's degrees. So if I have a student who has a bachelor's degree from UC or CSU, cannot get hired because they have no lab skills, come to the community college, get the lab skills, they're very hireable. How do we get industry to rewrite job descriptions so that the students who have the hands-on skills are hired?
Great. Excellent question, Leslie. Thank you. Nice to see you as well. So one of the things that I wanted to do, in fact, I'll give Dan Fletcher credit for this, is he said, hey, I think if we, as UC Berkeley, can't hire everyone, or sorry, get everyone, if we can get all our graduates hired, I don't think that's enough. He said, and so go out and when you talk to these companies, find out what the skills are, and then let's connect all of the education partners. And so in many ways, that's what Samantha's done, is Samantha's helped begin this process of connecting all of you and others. We've been reaching out to other folks as well. And so, Leslie, I think what this report tries to do is it tries to do just that. It says, here are the actual skill sets. Here are what people need to do on the job. And so, and then here's this group of companies that now understand that those skills could come from different entities. They could come from high school programs, because we have some very progressive high school programs that are training people up. It could come from some of the training programs that Samantha and her colleagues have set up. And it could come from, or especially could come from Laney and Chabot and Ohlone College. So I think just this whole exercise is an attempt to do that. So I appreciate your comment and also your question. And my answer is, we're onto it. We're trying to work on it through this type of vehicle. Other questions? Any questions from the chat? Samantha?
Yes, there's one more, and we're probably going to have to expedite this just in the interest of time. But we do have a question from Nick Cap. Are companies interested in badging for lab skills or certification of biotech skills? I don't know.
Right. Well, and one of the things that I saw this report doing is an attempt to establish some of the things that could work into a badging program. I have to be humble and say that I see myself as only a small part of this much larger enterprise of training people up and getting them into companies. But I just couldn't stand by it, because I talked to people like Ben, and I talked to people like Matt and Marshall, who are looking for people and can't always find those people. And they frequently say, hey, if there was a formal process so we knew that people were, quote, certified or badged up, as you say, then that would certainly help our efforts. And so my small piece on this, or this report's small piece on that, is an attempt to lay out some of those skill sets that could be part of a badging process. So yes, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Theyel. Thank you for your presentation. My quick question is, for an individual like me who has previous experience as a scientist in pharmaceutical industry, but was out of workforce for a little bit and is having a hard time getting back, do you have some kind of training or assistance program to get them, to help the person to get back on track? Because I've tried to communicate with recruiters. They keep saying they're looking for fresh minds, and people that are fresh, is because of the gap, they're having a hard time giving me the chance.
Right. So here's two suggestions. One suggestion is just as Leslie said, there's a way to really fine tune your skills through the community college programs, which are outstanding. Both I know Laney and Ohlone personally, and I can't endorse them more. That's one way. The other way is Michelle Nemitz is on this call, and one of the things she has established for this industry is a job portal. And the job portal right now has hundreds of jobs on it. I mean, I don't want to ever disrespect anyone, so I'm sorry that the recruiters said fresh minds. I think every mind can be fresh, and so maybe it's just another venue to find where the opportunities are. And Michelle has set this very, very significant portal up to find more positions. So one of the things about today is getting in touch with some of the people who are here to help you. So I think those two suggestions. One would be the programs at Ohlone and Laney, but also Michelle and her connections with her job portal.
Hey, Gregory, I'm going to jump in. Michelle or Vicky can actually speak to this if you want. And then this will be the last question. We'll break out into the rooms after this. And Gregory, you can introduce that. But let's just let Vicky or Michelle respond.
Yeah, thank you. This is Michelle speaking, and Gregory, thanks for mentioning it. I'll put our Career Lab job portal into the chat so that everyone's got the link. But we're really encouraging our members and other life science communities to post their open positions there. And then we're really doing everything we can to socialize this site with groups like the folks that are on this call today so that they're aware of it and they can send job seekers to the site. But I'm going to turn it over to Vicki really quickly just for a couple of minutes because Vicki is from the Biocom California Institute. They focus solely on workforce development for the life science industry throughout the state. And she's really spearheading some interesting programs that I think might be of interest for the folks on this call to kind of keep an eye on. We'll be rolling these out in the Bay Area over time, but I want you to be aware of what we're working on as well. So Vicki, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. And just I'll be brief here. There's a lot to cover that we could talk about, but I think one of the most interesting things is the comment that was made earlier about industry recognition of less than a bachelor's degree. And then that also ties in with the fact that most bachelor's degrees don't necessarily come with the hands-on experience. And so what we really feel committed to as an institute and Biocom Association as well is to help educate employers on what comes with these bachelor's degrees and what comes with the community college degree. And so we're working at the Institute to be able to actually help to vet many of the programs within the community colleges. And I'm working very closely with the Cal State system as well with the Chancellor's office right now to be able to make consistent education, consistent curriculum across the Cal State system for their bachelor's degree programs, especially in biotechnology. So we're working with them now so that that any of our employers who are electing to hire someone that has a degree from Cal State will be assured of the curriculum and be assured of the learning outcomes that they've received. And as for the community college associations and for the community colleges, we're looking, as I said, to vet those programs and to be able then to inform and educate our member companies on what is involved in those particular degrees. So I'd be happy to talk to any of the community colleges here. We're working mostly in Southern California right now as we're rolling this out. We're working with Los Angeles. We have a consortium there of community colleges. And as I said, we're actually piloting the consistent curriculum across a biomanufacturing technician certificate program across the Cal State system. And we have a consortium of 3 Cal State campuses that are actually working on preparing that curriculum that will be rolled out across all Cal States. So that's going to be happening in January. So if any of the educators are on the phone or interested in learning a bit more about that. Also, we work with Abraham Mendoza, who's on the line I see from Hayward. They have a fantastic ROP CTE course, and we're working with them as well so that we can help to develop those pathways into the correct programs and also get their students hired in. But we believe it's our job as association and as an institute to help to make sure that the curriculum is consistent with the employer's needs, and then to also be able to not to take it to the next step to say, we've certified this curriculum will work for you, and it is industry recognized so that you guys can get, so that your students can get a lot more value out of that. And that all ties in with the career portal that Michelle was talking about.
That's fabulous to hear, Vicki.
Thank you, Vicki. Sorry, Leslie, we're actually gonna move this conversation on into the breakout rooms because we do have limited time. So I'm actually, Greg, do you wanna just introduce this is our contact information here, but Gregory, do you just wanna introduce the breakout rooms and then we'll move to that because we'll dive a little bit deeper.
That's right. So our next module for today is actually a really important one. It's a workshop aspect. And so what I said is, based on the 100 interviews with companies around the Bay Area, about a 3-year period, we developed these sheets that show skill needs and job skills. And so what we really need is to have the industry people take a look at these and just, partly it's to introduce them to you, but part of them is to get your feedback. And then we also have a couple of questions about how you're finding your talent now. So we're gonna have some breakout rooms. We're gonna have 3 breakout rooms. One is biopharma, all right? So any of the biotech and pharma companies will join me and Michelle. And then we'll have another room that's medical device and equipment and digital healthcare. So if you're digital healthcare, there's a hardware and a data analytics components. We know that. That will be Carmelo and Samantha. And then we'll have one breakout, the third breakout room will be for genomics. We have a handful of genomics companies, and so we'd like to get them together. And LaToya will lead that group. Okay, so go ahead with the breakouts. The focus is really on hearing from the companies. And so I know we have fantastic educators on the call, but what we really want to do for this next workshop section is give the company people a chance to speak. So
yeah, and we'll spend about a half an hour in those rooms, and then you'll be prompted to come back. So we'll start to do that. Thanks for that, Gregory. So Kate, you can go ahead and put us in the rooms.
Okay, here goes.
I think we're all coming back in now. Excellent. Gregory, you want to do the little wrap up here?
Yes, and I think let me just very briefly talk about what our some of the high points from our group. First of all, we had excellent feedback on the positions. We had 3 positions, 2 biotech and 1 pharma position, and we really fine-tuned those with the help of a number of people. So that's one takeaway, and that's very specific to the sectors. Now, we also got a long list of ways that people are trying to develop a more diverse and equitable and included workforce. And so all the way from internships and getting more resumes, interviewing more people from more communities. And so we recorded all this, so we'll make all this available in a wrap-up email, but to everyone. But those are really the high points. I won't get into the specifics. Let me just hand it off to you, Samantha, and we want to hear from LaToya as well. So.
Yeah, just super quickly, since we only have 10 minutes left. Yeah, no, our group was great. We also got some good input from medical device, medical equipment folks, and spurred a lot of discussion of, you know, how detailed you can get in these specific roles. But we had a small group and very provided a lot of feedback. And as far as getting needs met, some of them use traditional ways of looking for candidates now, you know, Indeed and Craigslist. And so we talked about ways that they could maybe expand their search methods and include education and workforce and how we can help with that. So we'll let LaToya do a quick wrap up, and then we're gonna move on to the next thing.
Sure. So my group was excellent. Thank you, Jeff and Trish. We had 2 employers in genomics and were very engaged. And they said that the job description was pretty much spot on. They intentionally try to cover a lot of comprehensive territory so they can get, you know, people with broad skill sets, especially if it's a small genomics company, which most are. Certainly both Jeff and Trish's companies are on the smaller side. One of the things that I kind of mentioned, I thought that was missing, was a background in biological sciences. They said that at first, you know, not necessarily, but then I think after talking it through a little bit, they said it is really nice for someone to have that background in biological sciences and sometimes chemistry, especially, you know, for depending on the company size. And some of the other stakeholders chimed in after the employers had a chance to kind of talk through to ask questions about curriculum development for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how they are getting those skills met now. The 2 employers mentioned, you know, posting on Handshake, an internship platform, internal referrals from existing employees using Indeed, but also mentioned that the higher ed you know, entities could make it really easy. If they made it easy, that they would kind of post, you know, they would be happy to kind of partner as long as those things are easy and they can get those things reflected and get the word out about those job openings. For how education and workforce partners can help them do something differently. I'm sorry, going back to diversity, equity, inclusion. As a small company, it's on their radar, but they're a smaller company. They do definitely want a diverse workforce. And so really they want to try to partner to make that happen. And then what education and workforce partners can do is basically making sure that, you know, some of the candidates going through those 2-year programs, if they're really accelerating those programs, those are the candidates they would like to really reach out to and connect for those open positions. So thank you so much for participating.
Awesome, and thanks to Carmelo and LaToya and Gregory for facilitating those rooms. LaToya and Carmelo are on our staff, and they're they're incredible people. So moving quickly on, I'm actually going to give a 1-minute description, and I'm actually going to pass off my time to Renee Pierce, who is here from the state, the employment training panel. And so I want her to be able to talk, but really this next section was just to let you know, companies out there, that there are in the vein of finding people and training and trying to build out some of these workforce needs, that the Workforce Board actually has funds available to help businesses around training. And this, again, as Gregory mentioned earlier, can be for current workers if you're looking to skill them up, move them into new positions. During the pandemic, we know more people are having, the same number of people are having to do more tasks and lots of interest. And this sort of our customized training, incumbent worker training program can help with that. The employer designs the training. We don't do that, but we do help support it with funds. And so there's some requirements around that. And what I'll do is put a little information in that in our follow-up email. So if you're interested in accessing some of those, that's where you can do it, and you can contact me and we can continue the conversation. But I really want Renee from the employment training panel to talk also to businesses about resources available at the state. And so Renee, thanks for joining us today and being patient.
Thanks, Samantha. And I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but I did want to let people know that we are supporting Alameda County in their efforts to help you train up your employees, new hires, or whatever. So we have funded the Workforce Development Board with some ETP funds so that they can help you immediately rather than coming through ETP for a contract, which could take a while right now. But also I wanted to talk very briefly about a new initiative that we have around the community colleges, where we were just given $50 million extra dollars from the legislature that will go to the California community colleges to help them support the training of and skill upskilling for your workers. So we are going to be having our panel meeting on October 1 that I would encourage all of you to come in and listen to, because it's going to be very important on information on how these funds are going to be used. It's a sort of a new way of us giving the money out. So it's very important that the community colleges are strong partners for us because they are in your community. But also I wanted to say that if you do want to do training and you have want to start an in-house training program, talk to me. This is one of the things the DTP is looking for, is new ways that we can support employers, especially if they're wanting to bring in unskilled people and skill them up, especially in those DEI communities. You know, please reach out to me. I put my information in the chat earlier. If you need any questions, if you have any questions at all, please let me know.
That's great information, Renee. Thank you. Very timely for community colleges and also for businesses. There's lots of resources available at the state. I would highly recommend you take Renee's offer, take her up on her offer and contact her. And again, as she mentioned, we also have a contract now with ETP directly, specifically for the biomedical industry. We're going to start it this year. We hope to keep it going year after year. So that's something else you can contact me about to learn more about these resources. So we have about 2 minutes left. Just to wrap up, Gregory, I'll let you go ahead. And then I'll chime in. He's got a final slide.
Great. Yeah. One of the most important outcomes from today really is connecting to more people who are all working on this together. And so on this last slide, Samantha is really leading this effort now with
with help.
With help, yes. And Michelle has been doing a fantastic job for years And so if you don't know Michelle, now you do. So I think that's a really important connection. And the Biomedical Manufacturing Network, as I told you, is funded by the federal government. That's your tax dollars. And so I take no equity and I take no fees from anyone. We just, the folks who work with me, there are 10 of us, we help companies with federal funding. And so all three of us can be either portals to more information or more help or more money, as we found out with Renee, or we can help you directly. So that's my most important kind of call to action, is that you reach out to us, you know who we are, and you know how we can help you. And so, yeah, I'll let you wrap it all up, Samantha. But I just want to thank everyone for being here. And like I said, many of you I consider friends in the industry, and so I appreciate you being here. And so thank you, and let me know if I can help you in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that. I thank Gregory for doing this report, for Michelle and all our partners being on this call. Again, we were really excited to get this information out there, bring in our economic development and our workforce partners as well. We will be following up with some emails with the report and all that information. So we just really encourage you to reach out, stay connected, and we're going to be continuing this work as well. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope you found it valuable, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.